Hey everybody, this is Tracy here with another edition of A View from Tracy's Point. And today we are here to talk about something that is very, very important to the Black community, to the African American community. And I beg to ask the question, do you know what today is? Okay, so February 7th is National Black HIV/AIDS Awareness Day, and it's a day that focuses on HIV awareness in the Black community because we represent like a large percentage of HIV cases. And a lot of them are mainly in men having sex with men, are the highest number, but Black women who get caught in relationships or situationships where because women, the lowest number of transmission in HIV is women transmitting HIV to other women, and then women transmitting HIV to men. So mainly when you see this huge number, this huge like between Black women and white women with HIV cases, is usually has a lot to do with the gay, the Black male gay community and their large numbers of HIV, and then the whole down low situation where men are sleeping with other men and then not telling their female partners, and then women get it that way. So that hasn't been medically proven, but when you consider the information and you consider the actual statistics and facts surrounding HIV, there's no other conclusion that you can come to. And so HIV awareness has always been like important to me, mainly because I have daughters, and so coming up in the 80s when HIV was really prevalent, that's when it was really coming out. But back then it was like people didn't know they had HIV until it was full blown AIDS, which AIDS is the result of the HIV. And so I've had friends that have actually died from AIDS. My best friend from high school, he actually died from complications of AIDS. And so it's just always been something that's been important to me. And then I actually wrote a book, which is kind of what I was going to talk about today. Because the only time I wrote this book back in 2010. It was published in 2012. I started writing the book after watching an episode of the show. You guys remember the show The Doctors? Not sure if it still comes on, if it comes on a cable channel, but it was like a really big show back then where they had like 4 doctors and they would talk about different health issues. And so on this particular day, my daughter had stayed home from school for some reason. And so we were sitting there watching The Doctors, and they had a panel of young girls on the show. And so they were just basically talking about how promiscuous teens are, how teen pregnancy, girls getting, HIV, getting, sexually transmitted diseases, from having unprotected sex because they're just out there doing whatever. And so it prompted me to write this book. And so the book, The Red Bear Society, focuses on a high school, and it's a high school that has like a magnet program, so it's pretty diverse as far as the students are. And so one of the students contracts HIV, and the rest of the students center around him. And so the point of contention with the HIV, it actually deals with like a whole lot of other things, teen pregnancy, sex games that kids play, but it starts out where it's talking about the kids having a blood drive for one of the students that was in a car accident. And so from this blood drive, they found out that there were some students that were HIV positive. There were students that had other things going on. And so it leads the students to gather around each other. Then they have like another tragic event, and so they formed this organization called the Red Bear Society. And I'm actually getting ready to do a follow up to that book, and it's actually going to talk about and deal with sex trafficking amongst teenagers. And so whenever HIV awareness days come about, I always start to like promote the book, even though the book is I guess this year will be 9 years. It was actually released on February 7th in 2012. And I did like a whole HIV awareness themed book release party. I had people come out and talk about HIV awareness. I had HIV testing on site, and the event was a huge success. People really enjoyed it. I've actually been invited to talk at a couple of schools that bought the book for their students. One school is called PACE, and it's a school for girls who are having trouble in regular public schools. And so for 18 months, they can attend this school where they learn, how to behave and how to cope with stress and, things that are happening, bullying, that type of thing, so that they can go back into the public school system and be successful. And so one of the schools over in Bradenton, Florida, and they bought books for all the students, and they had like a book reading, and the lady was like, oh my God, I didn't know it had like sex in it. So I had to like read the book to the kids. So the kids kept the books at school, and then they would have like reading sessions throughout the week. And then when they finished reading the book, they had me come over and I talked to the students about the book. And that's something that I'm still open to doing if people are interested in doing that. And so I got some statistics here. I was on the CDC website. And so, they put National Black HIV/AIDS Awareness Day. It's February 7th, coordinated by the Strategic Leadership Council. National Black HIV/AIDS Awareness Day is observed every year on February 7th to increase HIV education, testing, community involvement, and treatment among Black communities. And I'm not sure if they still do it, but I remember Walgreens used to offer free HIV testing on the different awareness days. So February 7th is Black HIV Awareness Day. April 10th is Youth HIV Awareness Day. And then also interesting is the fact that I live in Florida, and Florida is always within the top 3 states that have the most HIV and AIDS cases. I live in the Tampa Bay area, which is always like 25th in the nation. Like, it's in the high numbers of HIV infections in the nation. The city that I live in has a very high HIV rate, so I take it very seriously. But I got some slides in the video where you can see the concentration of Black HIV cases in the United States, the concentration of cases in Florida, and then also a video showing, not a video, and then also a image showing the number of HIV cases amongst 13 to 24-year-olds throughout the United States. And you can see that those numbers are very low today, which is a great thing because education is key. Because there was a time when a lot of youth were dealing with HIV, and some of it was coming from kids that were born with HIV, because mandatory testing of HIV didn't begin until the mid 1990s. So kids that were born prior to 1990 were born to mothers that were infected with HIV. So they were born with HIV. And so I think it was like 1995. So you figure 2005, they would have been 10. So 2013, I think, is when that kind of would have phased out, because as of 1995, mothers were being tested for HIV. And so that was one of the scenarios that I cover in the Red Bear Society, is where these two girls get into a fight, and then the administrator is like, oh my God, we got to clean this up and, bleach the area and everything, because she knew that the girl was, she knew about HIV awareness. So after that, then the girl revealed that she was HIV positive. And then unprotected sex amongst teens was another one. Gay sex, male on male sex between teen boys, not knowing to protect themselves and not being aware of HIV. And so the youth, which is considered 13 to 24, they really took the helm, got serious about HIV awareness. And so they have cut their numbers dramatically amongst 13 to 24 years old, because they don't have that stigma. They're willing to talk to each other. They're willing to go get tested. So that was a good positive that came out of that. And then one other thing in the book is, like, I talk about this drug, this imaginary drug that was in my mind that would prevent HIV, or it would suppress the antibodies and the virus in the system. And then lo and behold, now we have PERC. And so when I was writing this book, I knew nothing about PERC. I don't even know if PERC was on the market back in 2010 when I actually wrote the book. It was published in 2012, but I wrote it in 2010. And so, I always laugh when I see those PERC commercials, because I was like, oh my God, that's the drug I was envisioning in the Red Bear Society. So the CDC goes on to say, get involved. This year's National Black HIV/AIDS Awareness Day theme is Together for Love, Stop HIV Stigma. And it highlights the messages of the Act Against AIDS and Let's Stop HIV Together campaign. Let's Stop HIV Together raises awareness that we all have a role to play in stopping HIV stigma, and partners and organizations can use the Together for Love, Stop HIV Stigma theme as an anchor phrase to highlight ways to reduce HIV stigma within the Black community. So when it comes to HIV stigma, especially in the Black community, we don't want to talk about it. We have people who have family members that have died from complications of AIDS. They will not come out and say that their loved one died from AIDS. And they will, you hear the term, oh, she had cancer or he had cancer. That seems to be like the popular one. And then some of them may say, it was kidney disease or it was liver disease or something like that. But they will never come out and say that the person died from complications of AIDS. And I know my first friend that died from AIDS, man, I think I was like maybe 18 or 19 years old. And he caught a cold, and then the cold got worse, and so he was real sick. And people don't have insurance, they don't go to the hospital, and so he just kept getting sicker and sicker. And then he was like, oh, I think I got the walking pneumonia. Then it was, oh, I think I got the pneumonia. And then it just got to the point where he had to go to the emergency room. And he went to the emergency room, and they admitted him into the hospital. And so it was like a couple of days passed by, and we was like, okay, well, where's Linares at? Like, he never came back from the hospital. And so then my friends and I, who he lived across the street from, we decided, okay, we're going to go down to the hospital and see what's going on. And so the hospital that they had him in, and remember, this was back in the 80s when people didn't know what to do with HIV and AIDS. And so it's like a basement area of the hospital where they have people like quarantine. I remember walking down this tunnel that we had to go through to get to this room. And it was just like a big room that had all these hospital beds in it. And when we got over to his bed, he had like lost, I'm sorry, I'm emotional. So he had lost all this weight. I don't even know if he knew that we were there. Like, that's how sick he was. And so we had to put on masks and gowns and everything. And so when we went over to the bed, like, I mean, he did not look like the person who a week ago was complaining, like, dang, I think I got a cold, dang, I think I got the flu. And he ended up dying 3 days later. And that was just like so traumatic. Like, that was the first person, that we had ever seen or even knew about AIDS, knew what AIDS was or anything. And so it's a horrible, horrible way to die, because it just infects like your major organs and everything. So that is why, I'm all about the awareness, and people need to get tested. And then I also share with people this story that if you're dating somebody, like, before you have sex with somebody, you both should go get tested. You should both go get tested together. And so I had this friend, and we were out walking, so male. So we were out walking, and so we were at the park, and the HIV testing bus was at the park. And so I was like, oh my God, come on, let's go over here and get tested. And he was like, oh, you go get tested. And I said, well, I can, but I'm just thinking it'd be fun. Let's go do it together. He got so angry with me and so belligerent with me. It was like he thought I was trying to insinuate that he had HIV. And I was left standing there, because he literally like just took off and started jogging away from me. And I was just standing there like, what is he so angry about? Like, why? I don't know, like, I was just so confused in that moment. Like, was he that terrified of getting tested for HIV and it coming back positive that it just made him lose his mind? And he literally did not speak to me for 2 weeks. And this was somebody that was my walking partner, and we used to walk together every morning. And so I would go out to the park, he would see me, he would get in the car and leave, or he would like start walking faster to avoid me. And I was just like, this is so bizarre. And then also, talking about stigma, they talk about the church all the time, and how, the church doesn't want to address HIV. And so when I used to work at this church, a local church here, I put on a HIV awareness event. And so, my coworkers were saying, people are not going to show up for that. They're not going to support that. You're wasting your time. And so I was like, okay, well, we'll do it on the night of Bible study. People already come to Bible study anyway on Wednesday night. And so, I asked the choir to perform. I asked the dance mime to perform. I had HIV testing buses on site. People from the HIV Awareness Center here, they came and, they put on presentations. We had a separate forum for the teens to talk to the teens. They played games with the teens, like awareness. And the one thing that I took from that event was the kids were more engaged and more excited about doing this HIV awareness program than the adults were. And like, them kids had the answers to the questions. They were like engaged. They wanted to go down and get tested. Their parents were getting upset because they learned that kids can get tested for HIV without their parents' permission. So we had a couple of parents that were upset, that the kids went down there and got tested. And we didn't have as big a turnout amongst the adults. I think with the kids, we may have had like 20 to 25 kids that showed up. For the adults, it probably was maybe 100 people that came, whereas, we usually have double that amount during Bible study. But, the way I was looking at it, as if one person got tested, then it was a success. And so even though the program didn't start until 7 o'clock, the testing vans came out at 4 o'clock. And we literally had like 2 or 3 people from the community that were waiting. Like, the bus pulled up, they came and waited for them to get set up and everything so that they could get tested. And so then it was kind of slow leading up to the event. People was kind of like, I don't want to be seen getting on the HIV testing bus. And so, but after they, heard the speakers speak, Then people went out afterwards and they wanted to get tested, and they actually ended up, they had to be gone by a certain time. And so what they did was offer free testing up to a week after that event, and that anybody that came in and said that they were at the church and was in line, to get tested, they went ahead and did the free testing for them. But if I'm remembering correctly, 24 people were tested that night, and of that 24, 4 of them came back with positive results. One of the people knew that they were HIV, had already been tested before, knew they were HIV, but I guess thought they'd get tested again to see if the results were the same. And then another person suspected that they might have been HIV because I guess someone they had dealt with in the past was HIV positive. And then the other 2 people were just discovering that they were HIV positive. And then they offered them counseling and everything. And so it was, totally anonymous. They gave me the numbers, but they didn't give me names of who the people were, whether they were members of the church or just people that came from the community. So, they're very serious about that. And then when I did the book signing and the book release party for the Red Bear Society, several of the people that attended the party, they were tested. And the lady who did the testing, like, she wouldn't give me any information. She wouldn't tell me how many people got tested, what the results were, or anything. She was like, I have total confidentiality. I don't give any of that information out. But she was also very instrumental in helping me with the research for the book that I did. So I was grateful to her. So basically just want to do this quick video on National Black HIV/AIDS Awareness Day to encourage people, if you've never been tested before, to go get tested. If you're in a relationship with someone and you're having sex or you're thinking about having sex, the 2 of you need to go together and get tested. And if he or she is acting funny and don't want to get tested, that's a sign that you probably don't want to be in a relationship with that person. And if you are interested in purchasing a copy of the Red Bear Society, it is on, it's available on Amazon. It comes in print, paperback. It's also available in Kindle. If you want a autographed copy of the book, my website is in development. It's tracyldairy.com. So even though you get the message when you log on that it's under construction, you can X out of that box, click on shop, and then go and you'll see the for sale page where you can buy a print copy and write a message. Like if you want me to do more than autograph it, if you want it to be a message to somebody or to you, there's a field where you can fill that out. And I think that's it. So guys, go ahead, leave your comments below. Let me know if you've ever been tested for HIV or if you plan on going to get tested for HIV. Rate the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And until the next time, I should talk to you guys later.